Chapter 44. Yulei International indeed proved itself to be a company run by women. The interior decorations for the dining hall, which encompasses the whole 15th story, were clean, bright, open, and delightfully colored. Large floor-to-ceiling glass windows were present on all four sides, and one could gaze upon the entire landscape of Shanghai City. The tables and chairs were all avant-garde silver-white colored mix of metal and plastic, showing a strong fashionable style. The lighting of the dining hall was also elegant and fresh. The hanging lights with glass that had a crystal-like texture came in various colors and types. In the hall, potted plants were sparsely distributed at the four corners. Their tender and lovely leaves showed that someone had been showing great care to them. At the counter for swiping their IDs, the table used was similar to those used in bars. The food and beverage workers wore clean and white work clothing, and welcomed everybody with smiles. When Chen entered the dining hall with the three ladies, not much attention was brought onto them. After all, despite Yulei International having comparatively lesser men, that did not mean they didn't have any. It was only the PR department which was a little special. On top of that, there were over 200 workers in the headquarters. When all were assembled onto this level, men wouldn't be so eye-catching. Seeing Chen's expression of interest, Zhang Kai laughed and said, "What do you think? It's not bad, right? Our company's welfare is considered one of the very best in the entire Shanghai. The design of this place is great. I felt my appetite rise the moment I entered." Chen spoke honestly. The dining hall's renovation was personally designed by our CEO. In these 2 years that our CEO has been on the job, the company's performance and welfare all increased substantially. We're all her fans, said Zhang Kai with a sense of pride. CEO. Isn't that my family's ice-cold wife? When Chen thought of that, then looked at the four corners' clean and neat decorations, he seemed to gain some deep understanding of it. Isn't it so? When looked at closely, these decorations are all cold-toned. Zhao Hongyan suddenly turned her head and said, "I suddenly thought of something after she mentioned the CEO. Yesterday the CEO called you to her office. What actually happened? Haven't I said it already? She was just greeting a new colleague." Chen vaguely replied. "Who would believe you?" Zhao Hongyan coquettishly protested. She knew she couldn't get an answer out, so she changed questions. "Hey, Chen, you've met our CEO. How does it feel to meet her?" "What do you mean? Did you come from Mars? You entered our company. How could it be that you don't know our boss Lin has a reputation of being the #1 beauty in Shanghai's business world?" Zhao Hongyan had a face of disbelief. "There's such a title." Chen really didn't know. He laughed then said, "She's alright I guess, just ice cold. Merely looking at her can induce goosebumps in the heart. It goes without saying that the CEO should have a distinctive temperament." Lu Mingyu, who kept silent, suddenly threw in a line. Zhao Hongyan and Zhang Kai both followed with sounds of approval. Chen was surprised. He didn't expect that in the four people took the dishes they wanted then sat at a comparatively larger table. At this time Chen realized, at the east of the dining hall, there was a space separated by a glass window with flower decorations, forming a private area. The tables inside were brightly colored, and the chairs were similarly colored leather sofas. Sitting inside there will definitely be even more comfortable. Why hasn't anybody gone in? Chen asked puzzlingly. The three ladies took a glance, then Zhang Kai answered, "That is the dining area for the company's management level. Only those who possess positions of vice head and above may enter. The management level's food is also different. They have a great chef to specially cook for them." Such a large area but there isn't a soul. Chen felt a little pity. How about we go over there? It will be a waste if it was empty anyways. Zhao Hongyan said, "At the vice head level and above, which of them doesn't have meetings often? Who will have the free time to eat at the company's dining hall every day? However, you need not think of going in. Rules are rules. Little employees like us only need to do our part well." Lu Mingyu then said, "Actually, that can also be considered as a motivational policy for normal employees. Only with a difference in treatment can one's competitive spirit be raised. Only with a competitive spirit can one make progress. I think this is necessary." Yang Chen looked at his plate's chicken cutlet and cauliflower. It's cooked well, but with only the size of 2 hands. He gloomily frowned. There's so little dishes, so little rice, I only need 2 or 3 mouthfuls to finish it. It isn't even as filling as a $5 meal from a small restaurant. The 3 ladies looked at each other in dismay, all of them revealed expressions of being unable to understand. The fact was, they simply didn't know what a $5 meal from those small restaurants in the markets were like. Seeing Yang Chen's expression of not having enough to eat, wordlessly, they began moving some of their dishes and rice on their plates to Yang Chen's with their chopsticks. Usually we can't finish our food, so we'll let you have some. Zhao Hongyan helplessly laughed. In the future, if you join us for lunch, we can avoid wasting food. Right at this moment, a line of people entered the dining hall. Many workers in the dining hall quietly stood up, revealing a somewhat nervous expression, and greeted those people. Oh, the CEO and department heads have come. The department heads meeting has ended. Zhang Kai cried out in alarm, stopped whatever she was doing, and stood up like the other ladies. Standing at the forefront was the impressive Lin Ruoxi, with her hair tied up in a bun, and no cosmetics on her clean, moon-like face. That ice-cold temperament could repel others from 1,000 miles away. She was like a heavenly goddess, in a pure black outfit, and seemed especially lucid and elegant beyond compare. This was a woman who didn't need any makeup, and only needs to be present to captivate her surroundings. The other management-level people who entered together with her proved this point. The majority of them were ladies, they wore fitting clothes, had graceful temperaments, some were older yet still attractive while some were youthful and pretty. This included Yang Chen's superior, the PR department's Mo Qiani. However, at that point of time, these glamorous beauties who followed behind Lin Ruoxi were like moons covered by the sun, and weren't as dazzling as they usually were. After a short glance or two, Yang Chen lowered his head. He felt that in this situation, it was better for him to just eat. Therefore, as everybody present stopped eating and stood up to greet, Yang Chen, who wolfed down his chicken cutlet, suddenly stood out in like a sore thumb. When Lin Ruoxi walked past Yang Chen, she didn't stop for the slightest moment, and didn't even pay a glance, as if she totally didn't recognize Yang Chen. The fact was, when she just entered, she saw the scene of the 3 ladies adding food onto Yang Chen's plate, and a burst of unhappiness entered her heart. Her cheap husband really thought of the company as his flirting spot. Furthermore, he even picked up 3 at a time. Instead, when the others from the management level saw Yang Chen, whom unlike the other workers who were putting in the effort to please, only cared about raking in his meal. They felt displeased, but wasn't in the right situation to say something, and could only intentionally or unintentionally remember this person by heart, and include him in their blacklist. Looking bright and charming, Mo Qiani, who was in a light yellow outfit, was at a meeting since early in the morning, and hadn't met Yang Chen yet. Upon seeing this scene, she also felt displeased, suddenly recalling something. A trace of teasing and taunting flashed in her eyes. She stopped by Yang Chen's side and said, "Yang Chen, be prepared to leave around 3 in the afternoon, you're coming with me to settle some work outside." With that said, she walked away without even looking back. Yang Chen swallowed the mouthful of food. How could he not know? This lady superior who was displeased with him definitely intends to pull some tricks on him. He wanted to evade it by saying he was very busy, but seeing Mo Qiani already seriously discussing something with the other management level people, she basically no longer paid any attention to him. "I wish you good luck." Zhao Hongyan beside him winked at Yang Chen. Yang Chen shrugged his shoulders, indifferently laughed, and continued burying his head into battle. Chapter 45. In the special region of Yulei International's dining hall, the management-level employees split into numerous groups to softly discuss the problems from the meeting. While on the CEO, Lin Ruoxi's side, other than the secretary and assistant Wu Yu, there were only 3 other female senior management-level employees who sat close. The other executives would also from time to time glance at their CEO, but didn't dare to get too close. This caused Lin Ruoxi's surroundings to form an eccentric atmosphere, which was unusually weird. The other person who sat closest to Lin Ruoxi was Mo Qiani. At that moment she didn't have the mood to eat the delicacies on her plate. She lowered her head to think for a moment, then finally spoke up with a low voice, "Boss Lin, the person you met yesterday, what do you think of him?" Even while eating, Lin Ruoxi maintained an elegant posture, just like a princess who had been through etiquette training for the royal family. Hearing Mo Qianni's words, she put down her chopsticks and bowl naturally, and with an indifferent face asked, "Who? That young Chen, isn't his attitude very bad?" Mo Qianni had constantly been puzzled by why Lin Ruoxi vetoed her proposal to fire Yang Chen. It was impossible to tell if Lin Ruoxi intentionally or unintentionally turned to look into the main dining hall. She then picked up her chopsticks and bowl, and said, "If he does not make a big blunder, go against the company's interests, or harm the company's image, then don't pay attention to him. I will handle everything else." With that said, she continued to eat in small mouthfuls. This time, Mo Qianni was even more bewildered. The expression on her elegant face rapidly changed, and in the end she still gave up asking what Lin Ruoxi's plan was. Her many years of experience told her that this woman, who was outrageously beautiful to the point where even jealousy was hard to arise towards, was not willing to converse anymore on this topic. "Fine, since the CEO is not going to fire you, I will let you hand over the resignation letter yourself," Mo Qianni hatefully thought. In the afternoon, Yang Chen played over an hour of games. Originally, he had planned to take an afternoon nap. He even prepared a inflatable pillow he borrowed from Zhao Hongyan, but Mo Qianni had indeed walked over. Upon seeing his slim, graceful and beautiful superior, Yang Chen felt that it was going to be a pain in the ass. Why was it that on that confident and beautiful face of hers, a smile that resembled the way the big bad wolf looked at the three little piggies is present? "Yang Chen, you have idled for most of the day. Accompany me to a place to run some errands, there is a need for you to do some work." Yang Chen looked around at his surroundings, seeing his other female colleagues serious at work, holding in their laughter and not helping him. He helplessly said, "As a chauffeur I'm alright, as for other things I'll have to consider. When the time comes you'll know what you need to do." Mo Qianni was extremely angry. This fella still has an abandoned life and court death attitude. Following Mo Qianni into the basement car park, Mo Qianni's ride was a red Audi A4. The moment he got in, he could smell Mo Qianni's enchanting body fragrance. Yang Chen couldn't resist enjoying a few sniffs, then laughed and said, "Miss Mo, your car's int. You're really thick-skinned." Mo Qianni's pretty face couldn't help but blush. "Are you always so frivolous in front of women?" "This is nothing, if it smells good I'll just smell more, after all, sniffing the fragrance is to know the woman. Those who secretly sniff are the wretched ones. A foreign scientific report I've read concludes that when men and women get together, attraction by scent plays a huge part. Once a man desires a woman, when he gets together with that woman, it is frequently because that woman's body scent conforms to that man's preferences." Among the hundreds of couples they surveyed, almost all were able to find their mate by their body's scent. Yang Chen then winked at Mo Qianni. "I'm too lazy to continue speaking to you." Mo Qianni started the car and ignored him, but a short time after starting the car, she couldn't help but ask curiously, "Does this mean that, when you married your wife, you depended on your nose to sniff?" Yang Chen was stunned. In his mind the frosty and pretty face of Lin Ruoxi surfaced. In his heart he muttered, "My wife's smell is something men cannot endure." But his mouth laughed and said, "That is not the main point. I like my wife's smell, but I also like other women's smell. Miss Mo, yours is not bad." After speaking, he took another big sniff. If the Audi A4 had those ejection seats found on fighter planes, Mo Qianni truly wanted to have this vulgar fella ejected into the sky. Throughout the whole journey, Mo Qianni's white face had a sheen of red on it that she couldn't remove no matter how. After more than a quarter of an hour, the car stopped at a relatively old office building. Mo Qianni breathed a sigh of relief, coldly glanced at Yang Chen, and said, "Can you see the Huacheng Apparel signboard?" Yang Chen yawned, and widened his eyes to see. In the middle of the office building in front, there was indeed a sign with white background and black words stating, "Huacheng Apparel's Limited Company," on it. "Is that our destination?" he asked. "It's yours, not mine." A trace of craftiness flashed past Mo Qianni's face. "I need to go to another company to negotiate, this one is yours." "Negotiate? About what?" said Yang Chen bewilderedly. "This Huacheng Apparel's company ordered $600,000 worth of apparel the previous year, but still owe a balance of $400,000. Originally the deadline is next year, but I heard Huacheng is already on the verge of collapsing, so we need to expedite the return of that 400,000, to prevent bad debts. Chen felt that there was something wrong with this situation. Miss Mo, so much money is at stake, yet you want a new employee like me to collect it. The difficulty is a little too high, right? The other PR employees all have things to do, and only you are idling about. Moreover, I'm having you expedite a return on debt and not to kill people. If you are a man, then don't dilly-dally. Said Mo Qianni as her pair of almond-like eyes stared at him. The fact is, Chen was really tempted to say, I am a man who dilly-dallies. But thinking about how he can't get away from this, he accepted it, received the business transaction information from Mo Qianni's hand, then very slowly walked towards the office building. Once you're done, give me a call, and I will come to pick you. After Mo Qianni said that, she charmingly smiled, then made a U-turn and left the car park, and while she was at it, she turned off her cell phone. Chen still hadn't learned that he was fooled by his superior. He unhurriedly walked into the office building, and upon entering he saw a gaudily dressed receptionist with heavy makeup who was painting her nails to overcome boredom. When the woman saw Chen enter, she immediately revealed an enchanting smile. Mister, do you need any service? Chen brandished the brown envelope in his hand. I'm from Ulay International, I'm hoping to discuss a problem regarding the funds of our business deal. Ulay International. The woman gave Chen an odd glance, then proceeded to check some things on the computer at the front desk, before she queried, excuse me, is it regarding the business deal's outstanding balance? Chen was happy. It seemed like this company was pretty good. They recognized the matter so quickly, and doesn't plan to renege on the debt, making it easier on him. He then nodded, that's right. The woman smiled extremely charmingly, walked up with her hands together on her abdomen, squeezing her pair of particularly eye-catching well-endowed breasts. That deep ravine looked like it could draw someone to fall into its abyss. Mister, please follow me, I shall bring you to the manager's office. With that said, she turned her slim waist and outstanding butt, and leisurely walked to the elevator. At the same time Chen kept up with her, seeing the woman's swaying rear view. A comfortable feeling aroused in his heart. Seems like that little girl Mo Qianni is not bad, this debt-chasing job is not bad at all. Chapter 46. Following the receptionist into the elevator, he discovered that the elevator was shabby like the building. On the four corners there were even advertisements that people usually only paste on lamp posts, things like folk remedies that could cure big and small illnesses, with directions to go to a specific lane, to a specific alley or address. There were all kinds. Rhetoric and gorgeous to the point that it can turn those large and proper mainstream advertising companies red with shame. Chen relished in seeing the various advertising languages. Continuously nodding he said, these advertisements are great, I like it. The lady who constantly maintained a lovely smile staggered, awkwardly smiled and said, Mr. has great insight. The elevator only stopped when it reached the top floor. Walking out of the elevator, Chen was flabbergasted. He was surprised to smell the pungent scent of smoke. He saw that in the large office in front, the arrangement of desks and chairs were in a mess. All kinds of paper, newspapers, paper napkins, toilet paper and even used women's underwear were randomly strewn on the ground. The computer monitors were mostly covered in some kind of filth and were blurry, while many monitors were obviously smashed broken. It was as if the entire hall hasn't been cleaned for several hundred years. Dust flew around chaotically, even half the fluorescent lights on the ceiling were blown. This scene was like an abandoned office, moreover the type that has been maliciously wrecked before. But what made Chen bewildered was, inside this place the office workers were a tide of people moving about. He could see a ton of people wearing all kinds of strange clothing, some are young, some are old, consisting of both men and women, who were assembled at different tables. They were either loudly throwing dice, tapping on show hand poker, playing mahjong or even playing solitaire. A majority of the men had cigarettes in their mouths, swallowing in clouds and spitting fog. The women were also gaudily dressed, walking around the men. It was unknown if they enjoyed being taken advantage of, or enjoyed freeloading off men. Breathing in the air that had smoke fumes that could choke a dead person, Chen finally understood. This was a gangster company opened by friends in the underworld. It's no wonder nobody came to chase for the debt from Ulay International. It's likely that they only realized it after the deal was made, and probably nobody from the PR department dared to come. Actually, Chen was half right. Yulei International indeed realized Huacheng Apparel Company basically wasn't a regular company after the deal was made. At that time, because the business transaction wasn't considered big, after receiving the deposit they sent the goods. But after that, when they did send specialized personnel to chase for payment, it was a pity that every person who saw Huacheng Company's true side all pissed their pants and ran away. Huacheng Apparel's boss even sent out word that if anybody still dares to ask for payment, they would beat the person to death and throw him out. Because the contract's deadline hasn't been reached, Yulei International also didn't have the option of filing for a lawsuit, so they could only stay passive and let things drag on. By having Chen come here, Mo Qianni obviously planned to use Huacheng to attack by using the strength of another, and have Chen leave the company of H. To an average person, this kind of scene was indeed frightening, but to Chen, rather than frightening, it was somewhat familiar to him. It could even be considered child's play to him. The front desk receptionist turned around, expecting to see what kind of frightened expression this fool had, but instead saw Chen's interested appearance, looking in all directions with a smile. What an idiot, let's see if you can still smile in a while. The woman sneered in her heart. Mister, our manager's office is right over there, please follow me, said the woman with a cold laugh. Chen nodded, laughed and said, your office environment is pretty good, even letting people smoke in the office, not bad, not bad. Some black lines hung on the woman's forehead, she was already suspecting whether Yulei International had sent a fool. The appearance of Chen attracted quite a number of gazes from Huacheng employees. Several well-built males evilly grinned as they walked over, looking at Chen with provoking and contemptful looks. A dark-faced well-built man extended his hand to casually touch the woman's body, while asking who Chen was. This woman obviously had an unordinary relationship with this group of people. As her boobs were fondled by that man a few times, she flirtatiously laughed. Under the bright light her face remained joyful as she replied, he's sent by Yulei International to chase for the debt, he wants me to bring him to see the boss. From Yulei International again. Several men and women laughed out loud. 2 months ago that man said he's a black belt in Taekwondo, but he was still crippled in a few moments, what belt is this brat then? The crowd of hoodlum employees all laughed in mockery, looking at Chen with an incomparably interested gazes, as if he was a fish on the chopping block just about to be filleted. A round-faced delinquent girl who wore a black short-sleeves shirt and denim miniskirt came forward, blew a breath of smoke towards Chen, and coyly said, hey handsome, why chase a debt, come accompany big sister to experience some fresh pleasures. You little vixen hadn't had your fill last night, how about some brothers here take turns to battle with you for several hundred rounds? The other short-haired skinny man loudly laughed and said. The delinquent girl covered her mouth and smiled, then raised her miniskirt and swayed it back and forth, with a welcoming expression, great, big sis is standing right here, you guys can all come. That sounds good. The dark-faced man who was rubbing the receptionist's butt gave Chen a look of scorn. Coincidentally, a fresh pretty boy delivered himself to us today, so our brothers can still explore some new positions. Hearing this small bunch of bandits spouting nonsense to scare him, Chen couldn't help but feel that this was funny. He was too lazy to speak to them anymore. Seeing the front desk's receptionist in the dark-faced man's embrace and moaning, he nearly turned into a pool of water. He then minded his own business and walked towards the manager's office. Hey, brat. Are you treating our words as shit or are you deaf? The dark-faced man saw Chen simply ignoring him, and immediately became angry. Chen carried on walking, totally ignoring him. The dark-faced man was enraged to the point his face and hands were twitching. He pushed away the receptionist in his embrace, pointed at Chen and shouted, brat, do you believe that if you take one more step, I will kick your balls till they burst? This time, Chen stopped, and slowly turned his head to glance at the dark-faced man. With a mere glance, the dark-faced man felt as if he fell into an abyss of ice, with all of his blood congealed. What kind of gaze is this, without any chance of survival, without any possibility of resisting, a powerful feeling of oppression as if trying to suffocate a person, pushing a person into an ash-colored world of desolation without ever coming back. I'm here to pursue a debt, not here to play with you guys. Chen naturally turned his body back, tossed away the documents folder to one side, and with soft steps he walked towards the large man. With a dull voice like plain water he said, originally, even if you guys didn't pay, I wouldn't even mind. If you gave me the money I would have instead found going through the procedures to return it troublesome. However, being spoken to like that by you, now I'm really planning to bring some money back. To be honest, I'm a very easy-going person. If you didn't cross the line, and it's just a joke or two, everybody can laugh about it. But you people, why are your brains so uncivilized? I will only say this once. I hate being threatened the most. The moment those words were spoken, it was as if Chen disappeared from where he was in a flash. When he once again appeared, everybody present could only see that the previously standing dark-faced man's body was crooked, and slowly dropped onto the ground, foaming at the mouth, with his eyes rolled back as he fainted. He had actually fainted from the pain. Chen stood by the large man's side, withdrew the fist he slammed into the large man's stomach, and indifferently looked at his surroundings. He then evilly smiled and asked, "What are you people dawdling for? Your brother has been hit, aren't you all going to avenge him?" If you like this video, please share, like, comment and subscribe, and don't forget to click notification bell so that you will be updated. Thank you.